all together? We'll get a seat. Does everyone have a copy of the summary report? Everyone have a copy? There are plenty in the back. All right. Let me pray for you. Lord, thank you for this time together. And thank you for the opportunity to come and hear these reports from folks that have worked so hard these past few months. Thank you for this time of transition. Thank you for the willingness of people to work and pray and seek what you want, what you would have us do moving forward. We pray, Lord, that things we talk about today will edify you, will equip us to be better witnesses, to better disciples. And we pray for those yet to be born, that they would come to Christ because of decisions that we make today. May your name and fame be spread throughout this community and beyond. May we conduct ourselves today in a way that will be pleasing to thee. And we'll thank you in Jesus' name. All right, I'm going to give you an overview of what we've done since March. I came to be your transitional pastor 1st of February and have been talking to your church team for several weeks before that, laid out a process that we have been working the last several months. So I'm going to walk you through that. Let's look at the second slide. It tells us some things that back in February and April, Charlie and I went to every adult Sunday school class and then met with the youth. And mainly I listened. I just listened. I asked them questions about when were the best times in the life of Springfield Baptist Church. What are the biggest challenges the church faces? What are the needs in the community? And then, where would you like to see the church in 3 years? And I simply took notes. I didn't respond much. I just listened. And so it took me until about the middle of April to get in all the classes. Part of that was to get to know some about the culture, get to know some of the people, hear the hearts of people. The transition process is to help the church get ready, not only for the next pastor, but really to carry out the Great Commission. And part of what drives the process is a transition team. So I met with the search team and the staff, and we developed a list of names of people to serve on the transition team. We needed about 30 or 35. We ended up with 35 people that were enlisted in March, and they were organized around 4 major areas that really came about from both the search team, from the staff, and then the listening sessions, and then my own observations of what some of the needs are. There were 4 big buckets we were going to look at. One is administration. That's basically decision making, how we handle finances. We're in the process of looking at your constitution and bylaws. We're revising the personnel manual. That team has been working on all of that. We also have a team that did a detailed study. We actually brought someone in, a friend of mine that works with me, and some of the rest of you, some of them on this team have been working on a facilities study. And we've been looking at all of our facilities, our parking, the land that we have, and all that. And then we looked at all of our ministries, Sunday school, discipleship, children's ministry, student ministry. We've looked at all of those things in depth, peeled away the layers. And then we looked at our worship and our outreach. I told you at the beginning of this process that I was going to come in and give you a complete physical. If you ever had one of those, you understand what that means. Some of those are revealing, some of those are quite invasive, if you will. And you can use your own analogies about that. But it wasn't just to come in and tell you all the good things, although we are going to talk about some of that. It's a time for you to take a good look at yourself. The transitional process is intended, my job as a transitional pastor is to help you to deal with some things that maybe you need to deal with for a long time, but particularly you need to deal with before a new pastor comes. Let's look at the next slide. One of the things that we did in the end of April that we try to do early on in the transitional process is this church memories workshop. We did it on April the 29th. We had about this many people on Sunday night down in Fellowship Hall. And we did a study of the 7 churches of Revelation. We had tables. There were 5 to 8 people at a table, and we had them study one of the 7 churches in Revelation, and they simply asked, what did Jesus commend them for, and what did he have against them? And then after we did that, and then we simply asked those same tables to fill out a sheet about if Jesus was writing a letter to us, what would he say? What would he commend us for? What would he have against us? And so we compiled those. But then at the end, we put up decades. We had big post-it note things on the wall and around decades. We went back to the 1950s and came all the way up to current time. And we asked people to take a little post-it note and to put it on the wall, a good memory, in decades. And there were every decade had some good memories. And then we celebrated some of those. I read a lot of those, and we celebrated those. And then the ending was that we asked people to take a different color post-it note and put some bad memories that they've had over the years. And generally, those are clustered in the last 20 years because hopefully people have gotten over if it happened longer than 20 years ago. They're still not mad about that, or upset about it. But anyway, we didn't read those, really, but what we did was look at the decades in which they were. And a lot of those were in the last 20 years, some of them the last 10 years. And then at the end, we took a big cross that you all have, and we asked people to go get those painful memories and put them on the cross, and we had a prayer at the end that God would help us to look forward and not backward. Then after that, we did the Transformational Church Assessment, what we call the TCAT. We'll look at some of those results here in a minute. We needed at least 30% of the church to do that. We had over that. We had 133 people that completed the TCAT. And then in June and July, the transition team continued to meet and compile and look at information and findings and insights. And then let's look at the next slide. Part of what we realized in looking at your history is that the church has been on a 13-year decline in Sunday school and worship. We also realized that the Sunday school classes need to be restructured, and actually more classes and added, and the classes to be smaller in size. And then let's go to the next slide. One of the things we realized that we needed to address the low percentage of young adults and younger children. So we've got some slides here that show that. This is the decline. You can just see from 2005, we peaked out at about 440 in Bible study. But ever since then, there's been a continual decline where this year we averaged about 290. So part of the interesting piece of that is usually churches that are that steep of a decline, there would be a crisis. They'd be laying off staff, they'd be cutting back on ministries and all that kind of thing. The interesting thing that's masking some of that is that your giving has actually increased in that period of time. So there wasn't a crisis. I've never dealt with a church that had this kind of decline that didn't have some kind of a major crisis. And yet you were masked to some degree by the fact that your giving far outpaced the decline. Let's look at the next one. Part of what we did was we did an actuarial analysis of the people that actually attend worship. We did this over 4 weeks. Some of you were here and remember that. We asked you to write down your age and your gender. We also counted the cars in the parking lot that week and those weeks and got an idea of about how many persons per car come. It's about 1.7, which is pretty much national average. But what we discovered, not only from that study, but also looking at attendance records in Sunday school and correlating those, was that the attendance in the church, which is the orange line, and then the community demographic is the blue line. And you can tell from the age is from left to right, from your left to my right, is the age. The blue is the community, and you can tell the 40 to 49, actually it starts to peak after 50, from 40 to 49, we have far fewer people than the community, people of 49 and under. But then when you get past 50, we spike. We're over double of what the community is in that age group. And then our 70 to 79 is significantly, it's double what the community is. Our 80 to 90 is double, almost 3 times what the community is. So basically, we're an older congregation. I mean, just look around here this morning. And the community, however, is younger. So we have a great opportunity. But a healthy church, and a church that wants to continue to make impact has to reflect the community. And so thus, that slide that we've got to reach a younger demographic. Let's look at the next slide. This gives the number of adults and the church, and then the ideal. And we're at 19% of adults is higher, and the students is 5% lower, the kids is 4% lower, and the preschool is 10% lower. So not only are we an older congregation, but generally we're older in adults, which, that makes sense. If you got older folks coming, they generally don't have preschoolers, children, and teenagers. So that's the people that attend Sunday school. Let's go to the next slide. And so the summary then, part of the facilities, and you're going to hear some of this today, that this facility right here that we're sitting in can average 450. Now what that means is it'll hold about 540 with the choir packed, the balcony packed, everybody liking each other. Like you were at a Titans game, right? People complain about sitting close to each other until they go to the Predators game or the Titans or University of Tennessee. But anyway, generally in a worship center, about 80% is what we consider comfortably full. So that happened to you back in the early 2000s. You got comfortably full. You were running about 440 in Sunday school. You had packed out your worship center at around 500. Thus, you added a second worship service to accommodate that, which makes sense. Generally, when you add a second worship, there's a rule of thumb. You like a critical mass. You want your worship center to be at least 40% full. So if you were 40% full, you would be having somewhere between 180 and 200 people in your first worship in order to have energy, to have synergy. And when you started, you had about 150. Sometimes you'd have 180. But what's happened is that as the church has declined over these last 13 years, both worships have declined. And I don't know, there's a lot of reasons we could talk about, but that's just the facts. It's like Joe Friday. It's just the facts. The parking, however, is you have, interestingly enough, in a downtown church like this, parking is often a problem, but you don't have a parking problem. You've got not only land on which you park, but you've got shared parking around you to accommodate at least 450 people in one worship service. So, just based on the numbers, and based on what's happened the last 13 years, you don't need 2 worships at this time. You did one time because you had maxed out your capacity, but at some point you've got to, the attendance has got to turn upward. And then what it says, once the worship attendance reaches 450 consistently, you can certainly add a second worship. And interestingly enough, some people think you don't have enough Sunday school space. Well, with existing space, this is the way it is, existing classes. If the existing classes ran 50% of their capacity in their class, you'd be running 550 in Sunday school. If you ran 60%, which is usually a norm, you'd be well over 600. So you've got plenty of educational space as it is to have one worship. You actually have enough educational space to support 2 full worship services. Some people don't believe that, but the numbers show it. This next slide is it's hard for you to read, but the markers, the arrows there, the top line shows what your capacity is in worship, which is about 450. There's another line, the blue line over there shows where your worship attendance has been heading downward. And then we've projected out, if you grew 8%, how long would it take to max out your worship service? If you grew 4%, if you grew 2%. 8% growth in a church is stupid growth. Very few churches grow 8%. Generally, in a church of this size, you have to replace about 20% of the people every year. People die, people move, people quit coming for various reasons. Life changes. So if you're running 300, you've got to replace it. You've got to have about 60 new people a year just to stay at 300. And then to add on top of that another 8% is unusual. You could have 8% growth, but generally about 4% is about what a good, healthy growth strategy is. If you can grow 4% over time, you can incorporate that. So 4% would get you to about 8 years of having one worship before you have to have 2 worships, which is why you started your worships in the beginning. So the summary, let's go to the next slide. The church staffing, some other things we came to see. The church staffing needs to be reviewed and processes put in place to ensure adequate trained staff and all administrators. So we're in the process of doing that with the personnel team. Your per capita giving is good. I've already talked about that. Financial support is strong. And then let's look at the last one. This is a little telling. The additions over the last 5 years, you've had 148 additions over. So it isn't that you haven't been replacing people. You've had, you've had some people join over that period of time. But in that same time, your Sunday school attendance has dropped from 342 to 290. You've lost 52 people. So if you add the 148 and the 52, in 5 years, you've lost 200 people. Now, that ought to be a crisis point for you. That ought to be a wake-up call. That ought to be, oh my goodness, we've got to do something. And probably that's why I'm here. That's why you have me as your transitional pastor and not just went out and found a full-time pastor. So, let's look quickly at the TCAT. I'm not going to spend a lot of time with this. 133 people completed it. It was a good age, breakdown. The next slide shows some of the things we've already shared with you, that one of your highest areas of agreement is in prayer. That prayer, you really feel strongly about the prayer ministry. You feel pretty good about your worship services. You feel like you have a missionary mindset. Where you're really challenged is this relational intentionality is really about discipleship. And even with mission and community, you like to see numbers. 5 is strongly agree, and 0 is strongly disagree. And And so you like to see numbers in the 3.5 or 4 range, which we didn't see any of those here. So part of that is somewhat of an esteem factor within the church. So here are some of the next steps that we have been working on. It says if you really love your small groups, which is one of the high points, that we ask the question, does the church, are small groups important to the church? And overwhelmingly, you said yes. Strongly agree with that. But then the next, a corollary statement to that is the church regularly starts new groups. And then it was more middle. It was not strongly agree, it wasn't disagree, but it's, well, not so much. We're really not doing that. So if you really love your small groups, your Sunday school, you need to invite people and you need to start new ones. You need to continue to pray to help members learn how to pray and then give them concrete direction on what to pray for. To celebrate the love people have for the church, to allow people to get involved in cleaning up and painting and other activities to strengthen their commitment. To encourage the congregation to participate actively in the acts of worship and let the Spirit of God encourage them to express themselves to their Lord. And then those are some of the celebrations we want to build on. And then let's look at the next slide. It talks about that part of what we need is a clearly articulated mission for the church. What is it we're trying to accomplish? And then we need to establish a new members class where people can learn about the church. And then the next slide shows we need a discipleship process that helps people move toward a deeper connection to God and others. And then we need to help members cultivate a culture of church esteem where they're excited to invite others to their church, to your church. So we've been working on this since March, the transition team has. And so when we came to August, the kind of culmination of this was to get these 35 people together. We sent them a whole bunch of information that they were to process, and then we took them through a 4-hour strategy retreat. Again, my friend Doug Akers and I have done this with multiple churches over the years. We led them to think about what could be. Let's look at the next slide. So what people did, they came and looked at what is, and they shared their impressions about the information we've given them, and they surmised some things out of that. And then we got them to think about what some of the dreams would be. What are some of your dreams for your church? What could be? And we processed that about. We talked about the community. We wanted to care for the community. We wanted unity and harmony in the church. We wanted better communication and cooperation, and we wanted to attract young adults and their children. So out of that came 3 big areas that you're going to hear about this morning. One is we need a better communication process. Over the past several months, it has become apparent that there's a great need to improve how information is communicated within the church and to the church family at large, and even to the community. The strategy will focus on items such as the website, bulletin, newsletters, and other forms of mass communication. The goal is to let Springfield know more about the church and our mission. Then we're also looked at decision making. That's another big bucket you're going to hear about this morning. The strategy will provide guidance to the church on how to move forward by developing a structure of how to make decisions. A new organizational structure will be proposed dealing with the daily decision making as well as a long-term, far-reaching decisions that affect the church body at large. This next logical step must be intricately entwined with the communication process mentioned above. And then the last one we've been working on is building a disciple-making process. Building on the excellence of Sunday school, this strategy will seek to develop ways to create and strengthen disciples. The areas of worship, evangelism, missions will be incorporated into the strategy. How the education ministry needs to be modified to encourage growth and attract young adults, engaging the community in ministry, and offer opportunities for both salvation and growth for existing Christians will be considered. And so we got together, and the last slide you'll see these people, we talked and we shared on these big boards, and we came up with some things, some recommendations, some things that we're working on that you're going to hear about now. Mitchell's going to come and share with us the communication process. Mitchell is Doing fine. And he's got kidney stones. And he's going to have laser surgery again Tuesday. We want to pray for him, but we appreciate him being here. And
first, I think I never stood in front of the microphone. Okay, as he said, my name is Mitch Baker. And it's been great over the past several months to have the opportunity to serve on this part of the transition process. So,
turn that on.
Worse. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to walk through with you the findings of the communications team, which is a part of this transition team. First, you see the members of the team there that were all a part of trying to get to this decision point we're at. The next slide will just reiterate what Dan had mentioned, that through the TCAP we realize that communication is an area in the church that needs improvement. So the current communications issues within the church. First is that our church membership directory is out of date and incomplete. It is a challenge often to get things out to our membership because of that. Next, the church calendar is incomplete and not easily accessible, and we'll come back in a little bit and talk about why that is, but literally these are bullet points. And next is that we need to be able to streamline our church website. It's a place where many people these days want to go for information, and there are a lot of things that we can do to help make that a more valuable resource. We have some social media profiles. That means things like Facebook, but those are scattered amongst the different groups of the church, so we really need to work on making sure that we streamline those different social media profiles so that, once again, they are all producing the same information. Communication systems within our church we have currently that are not being utilized that will also help us get information out to people. So, what it comes down to, in a nutshell, is first and foremost, we are not effectively communicating with the people within our church. If you're involved enough in the church, you have run into this at least once. The more involved you are, I think you realize the more this happens. Is that there are a lot of times, and Dan has spoken before, that you don't have to know everything that's happening in the church. But if you're going to do something in the church, it's really nice to know what else is happening, and that's something we have to work on. So because of that, if we can't do that within our own church body, we can't expect to be able to do that effectively to the community. So at the heart, our issues are communicating within our church body and communicating to the community. So the committee's proposal, first and foremost, is to begin by updating the church directory. We plan to do that through making paper copies of that information sheet available, as well as making things available electronically. This is for registering new members. This is for registering people that probably are part of the church now that have not yet put all that information down, or even for people that need to update information, people like myself. A year and a half ago, 911 came in and said, every number on your road needs to change to make sure that stuff makes more sense. So that's been a huge process. I didn't change addresses, but I changed the number on the side of my address. And getting that changed here at all the different parts of the church has been a long process. So to do this is going to be something that our part of the transition team handles. We are going to work to try to have a way to have people sign in when they show up. Don't think this is like we're tracking your attendance. We just want to know when people come in that if the Galuzis came in today, that they're on my list, so I need to know and make sure that I have the right information for those people. Then I can go and look and see, have they turned in, is the information that we have for them correct. Through this, we hope to create or update an online database of membership information. That way, whomever within the church needs to be able to access parts of that information can. If Jason needs to be able to get things out to the choir, if Jody needs to be able to get things out to the students, etc. If that is something that is online, then all of our administration and staff will be able to access that. So that is a process that our team is going to work on. Once we get through this step, you will see the people listed there on the front working to try to help update that information and get to a point where we feel like we have the tools to communicate with the people within our church. The second step is that we feel it necessary to work to funnel the communications that are coming into the church to a central point. If you have calendar requests, if you want to use the facilities, if you're looking to host an event, when services will happen, making sure that we document when, how many visitors we had on a day, when someone was baptized, what the attendance in Sunday school was. But we need to get to all of this information that's coming into the church, coming to a centralized point. Because what we have now is if we want to do something, if we want to find something out, we go to whomever we feel like is in charge of that, and that person knows what's happening. But what we have found is that the rest of the organizations within the church are not often aware of what's happening. So to fix that, we want to get communication all coming to a centralized point. And then once we do that, once we know that all of this information is coming to a single point, now we can take any and all viable forms of communication to get information out to the church body and to the community. This in no way wants to negate the things that we're already doing. It just wants to streamline those and add to that. We send things out through paper, and we do that well. But we are also in an age where there are a lot of people that want that information electronically. And that is a part that we are missing. Whether that is, there's an age group that would prefer an email. There's an age group that would prefer a phone call or a voicemail. There is an age group that would prefer a text message. There is an age group that would just prefer a post on Instagram. And if we want to communicate to everybody, then we need to be able to send that information out in all those ways. And many of those we are not currently doing, which is a part of why we see the issues that we have in our current demographics. Those are just the things that we have access to. The last one on there, if you all can read that, Raintree is the one that might not make as much sense. Raintree is an automated calling system. We actually have the technology in the building here to put people's information in, and so we could send out a church-wide if we needed to, much like if you've had students in school, but we can also break that down. If a message needs to go out to the deacons, needs to go out to the choir, needs to go out to so-and-so's Sunday school class. We have that technology, but that's a piece that we're not currently using that can be very, very valuable for helping get information out to people quickly. So the next thing here is what we feel like are the communications responsibilities. What we need to be doing for effectively communicating. Bringing in all the information from staff. Managing the social media profiles that we have. Adding to those, encompassing the different types of social media that we're not currently using. Maintaining the church calendar. Maintaining the church website. Creating the weekly bulletins. Managing the Raintree communication systems that are similar to us. Create and distribute the Informer, update and maintain digital signage, record and archive information, update and maintain the church directory, coordinate facilities use, manage prospective and new member lists. Now, there are some things on that list that we are doing. Please note that as we do this, it is not exhaustive, but that is how we set this list up to be, to try to look at all of the things that we needed to be doing in terms of communication. So there are some things on that list that you already see. But there are some things that we don't see, as well as some things that we can look to improve on. Because in society today, the ability to communicate quickly and effectively is paramount. Whether we like it or not, there are a lot of people in society, especially as you get towards my age and younger, that if you can't get it to me really quick and really succinct, the interest goes away. So as much as that's frustrating, I teach high school, I deal with it all the time. It's very frustrating. It is still a necessity. It's still something we have to do because we are here to reach everyone. And to be able to reach everyone, we have to go meet them where they are. We can't just expect that everybody's going to walk in the door on their own. We have to reach out for them. So the last piece here is the recommendation of our group is that at this point we are going to meet with the personnel committee to look at what are the current job descriptions and staff responsibilities, and look at that against what we just looked at as the list of all of the communications needs that we currently have, so that we can see whom do we have on staff, what can we accomplish, how can we do some of these things through what we already have. And when we look at that piece, then we'll say, okay, is there still enough stuff on this list that would necessitate getting additional help? Because I know that just looks like 2 slides worth of stuff, but if we took the time to break that down, sometimes each one of the pieces of that is several hours worth of work throughout the course of a week. So there's a lot of things that we have to do if we want to increase and be effective in our communications. So that is our next step, is to meet with personnel to see how that will go. Yes. And so if we get through this personnel meeting and we say, hey, there's still enough stuff on this list that is not yet been passed, then what would it need to look like to try to bring someone in to help with that? Someone that could help direct communications. Maybe it's not necessarily the informer or the bulletin of things that we're already doing, but someone that can help with the calendar, someone that can help with facilities usage, someone that can help with the social media profiles, someone that can manage Raintree or some other software like that. Those are all very valuable pieces that we would like to see incorporated into the communications process. But at this point, we seek to meet with personnel to see the viability, and then if that happens, move forward to budget and finance.
You may have questions, we're going to leave those to the end.
Thanks, Ian. Good morning. Move that out. All right, can you hear me in the back? Wave. Can you hear me? Good. We're all friends, right? Excellent. Those that may not know, I'm Matthew Browning, and I'm here to represent the decision-making group from the Transformational Focus team. Next slide, please. What I'm here today is to do 3 things for you. I want to define our present reality. And truth be told, although decisions are made in this church and made often, we have no clearly defined process of how we make decisions as a church body. And even though we've been fortunate in so far that we have not found ourselves in this position, our current bylaws and processes leave us vulnerable to manipulation from single individuals or groups within our church body if they were to come in mass and potentially obligate the church either in a questionable finance or questionable mission opportunity. And we'd like to shore that up. And as I mentioned, we make decisions as a church, and they have to happen, and we have well-intended people in great places making decisions. But a lot of times we are making decisions independent of each other and independent of other church committees. And that's where we found ourselves in our present reality. Our proposed resolution for this is the formation of a church council. This is a new concept for the church, and the details are currently being worked out within the bylaws. We are not asking for a formal proposal for you to vote on next week, as you will hear in the next group. But the information that I'm sharing with you today is intended explanation of the details. Last, the church council advantages is that they will be able to clearly define a process of making decisions. There will be representation cross-sectional throughout the church and through the current committee systems so that there is a common body of leaders who have looked at a decision, looked at a choice, looked at a request, made sure that it makes sense for what the church is doing as a whole, make sure that it's run through personnel and finance, and that we've looked at all the risks and benefits of moving forward with the proposal, and then brought to the church body after being vetted. Rather than being brought to the church body and being vetted in open forum, we want to have the homework done before we bring something to you. The church council also allows all of our current committees to be able to integrate better together. Rather than having one committee have a wonderful idea and a great purpose and off and running, we want to make sure the calendar is accommodating so that if there's another group that needs to have something at the same time, or if they're looking to use the resources like the buses, there is a central location for coordination. And last, clearinghouse is that if we decide as we move forward with some of these transformational processes that you're hearing about, that this church council is going to be the clearinghouse to make sure that the decisions, that the choices, that the opportunities brought to the church body have been looked at from all angles. Therefore, when it comes to you, it should be in the most succinct and efficient information for you to make the best decision as a church body. So the question is towards the end, but hopefully what you will see going from here, a recommendation from the group to the church body in the form of bylaws changes to implement and start the church council on January 1st. Thanks.
Good morning, brothers and sisters. This is the family of God known as Springfield Baptist Church, and it is an absolutely beautiful picture. What I'm about to share as the disciple-making portion of the transition team is to develop a strategy to unify the church and create opportunity for growth. That's both spiritually and numerically. We've identified the purpose of the church to know Christ and to make Him known. To do this, we need to effectively train disciple makers. Through months of prayer, we've drawn these conclusions. Create a worship atmosphere that is healthy, vibrant, and welcoming for visitors and members alike. Brother Dan has already given you the backstory as far as why this is. But it's also, there's a little more to it than that. You know, when any of us go to like a stadium, a theater, a concert, or whatever, and the place is packed, there is just that human element of energy that captures you. It transcends just explanation. And yet, the church body is above and beyond all that. So, what we are encouraging is to recommend combining the first and second services to meet at 10 o'clock starting November 4th with Sunday School at 8:45. And remember, if you vote on this and you vote affirmative, that's also the week that we change time. So just keep that in mind. Not that we're trying to create challenges. And that really is the one recommendation that we're making. We have other initiatives, and also what's very important is that with these initiatives, it's every one of you that need to be engaged. Because it will only be successful as God uses each of us, and He's gifted each one of us with skills and talents to be able to do this. So it's not me, it's not just the transition team, it's each one of us. So, and then next is the culture has changed so much over the last 20, 30, 40 years, where everything was pretty much around the church. But now there's so many outside activities, whether it's sports, music, whatever. So to reduce Sunday night activities to one adult Bible study to meet in the chapel, children youth events to a transition to Wednesday nights, and the special events will still continue on Sunday nights. Next. So for disciple Christians through small group experiences, Brother Dan did talk about that. And this is not an exhaustive list. It's not complete. We welcome each one of your ideas and your input. If you'll speak with any one of us on the team, we would love to hear from you. We'll start a new member development process, and by that it's almost like a big brother, big sister scenario where we'll have a mentor group, and we would love for a number of you to be involved in that to help bring along new church members or new Christians. So, next, let's see here. create a second welcoming center in the New Fellowship Hall. We all know there's multiple doors to this place. Primarily two major ones, the Main Street and then the New Fellowship Hall. So we want to make it conducive for people, visitors that come here to be able to engage quickly. So we will be meeting them with an appointed individual and then giving them information to navigate both the physical plan as well as where certain certain Sunday school classes are, etc. And encourage members, go back one second. Encourage members to engage in the active and intentional role in the outreach program. This is indeed where every one of us will need to be involved. So, thank you.
So, question?
There are mics here. We'll be glad to bring you a mic. If you've got a question, raise your hand, and we'll run a mic to you so we can hear you. Anybody have a question of anybody, myself, anyone on the team? Glad to try to answer any of your thoughts. The vote on for the change in the worship will be next Sunday morning by ballot in both worships. So if you have a question about that, we'll vote next Sunday. The reason we picked November the 4th, part of it was time change. Part of it was having a youth service that day. We wanted to have one worship anyway. The youth are going to be sharing. We've got a special speaker coming in that day. We're doing a lot of activities that weekend with the youth. We're going to have one worship service that day anyway. So that's, some of you probably got questions about that. We'll vote next Sunday about that. We're going to vote tonight in business meeting to receive this report. We want it in the minutes. It'll be put in the minutes. We'll make sure there's a record of the findings and all that kind of stuff. It's for historical purposes. We'll be doing that in business meeting tonight. Question? Raise your hand. We'll get you a mic. Anybody? It'll be a short meeting. We want to do it on Sunday morning so you would get the information. We want to hand it out to you ahead of time so you can read it, process it. You're welcome to ask any of these folks anything, any of the questions that you have. We'll vote. The only recommendation right now is on the worship. The decision-making the church council will hope to have in the December business meeting to be able to implement at 1st of January. They're working on that. Anybody? I'm not going to prolong it. All right, this stand will be dismissed. I hope you all stay for worship. 10:30, we're going to have worship this morning. So, Johnny, thank you for running. Appreciate that.